We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another very special edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young, our weekly podcast here at Pro Cannabis Media, where we urge you to like, share, and subscribe our content so you too can learn a little something about this amazing plant that we call cannabis. Joining me from 3,000 miles away from our studios here on the East Coast outside of Boston is Anna Symonds from East Fork Cultivars in Portland, Oregon. Anna, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Jimmy, it's a pleasure to be here.
Tell us a little bit about East Fork Cultivars and how you got into the cannabis business.
I would love to. So East Fork is a family-owned farm in Southern Oregon, little town of Tequilma, down near the California border. It's kind of known for some communes that were started in the 70s and different things, but there's a lot of agriculture and the area is very strong in cannabis culture in general. And so East Fork was started by two brothers, Aaron and Nathan Howard. Aaron lives down in that area in Tequilma, and they had started as medical growers for their brother Wesley, their other brother, who was born with neurofibromatosis. So that's a genetic condition that gives people really severe symptoms. You know, Wes had epilepsy and tumors throughout his body, a lot of pain. He has since passed away from complications of his illness, but being able to help him and seeing the relief that cannabis gave him that nothing else could was what started the brothers' wish to start a cannabis farm and to bring this medicine to more people. Now we focus on different ratios with CBD mixed ratio or dominant. Even on our cannabis side, we also have a craft hemp farm and we grow regeneratively. So we're improving the ecosystems that we're growing in, and we're USDA certified organic on the hemp side because we can do that. It's not allowed for cannabis, but we are Sun and Earth certified, which is a great program that's been put forward by Dr. Bronner's as a nonprofit, the soap company, you may know. So so that's my passion. And I'm our director of education. So I get to teach people cannabis science with a focus on CBD and how to use the plant to make their lives better.
There's so many cannabinoids inside this plant. It boggles my mind for someone who really has very limited chemistry background. I used to laugh at my friends at college that took organic chemistry because it was the hardest class you could ever take in a million years. And, I was doing my history and liberal arts thing. But I am amazed. I've gotten quite an education over the last few years of hosting this. And I've talked to more scientists and botanists and chemists than I've ever in my entire life. And I am amazed that even though we've learned so much about this plant, there's still so much more to learn. And it seems like they're discovering new cannabinoids almost every day. How active are you getting into the actual chemical makeup of these plants?
Well, I first am not a doctor, and I'm also, I don't have a degree in hard science or anything like that. I have a background in communication and words,
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. But that said, I have had the opportunity for my job to spend my time reading, researching in conferences. Of course, researchers are sharing their work and explaining their data. And so I've had the opportunity to learn a tremendous amount, like you said. So it's an emerging area. There are universities starting programs around this, but they're all still pretty much working off the same body of research that anybody who really wants to can access through, the internet. I mean, peer-reviewed studies and that kind of thing. But I do think the conferences have been an amazing opportunity to really hear that research explained verbally by the person doing it is pretty thrilling. Does that make me a nerd?
No, it does not make you a nerd. In fact, it makes me respect you even more because you understand where your limitations are and where your passions are. And when you're involved with a product like this that you know is impacting lives, even saving people's lives, giving them an opportunity to overcome some of the medical challenges or that they may be facing, how worthwhile is that for you as far as rewarding goes?
It is everything.
Yeah.
It's something that I didn't see coming, I guess, as I got involved in the cannabis world. Before this role, I worked with another organization, and they were transitioning from being medical cannabis growers into the new adult use system here. And so I had the opportunity for a while to work with patients, and they were letting me know the feedback, like, hey, I have Crohn's, and these are the things that helped me. And here's how this is the way it helps me the most. I have epilepsy. This is what helps me the most, and so on. And since then, with my job as an educator, even more people have shared their stories with me. And I'm incredibly humbled by it because, it's just to have the opportunity to share a piece of information that can change someone's life in a meaningful way. It feels like a responsibility. Once you know these things, how could you not be telling everyone who could benefit?
And yet you still have to face, like anyone in this business, this stigma that's existed for 80 years now in Oregon and on the West Coast, Washington and California. Needless to say, to me, this is, throw in Colorado in there as well. Those are the mature markets, right? With maturity, I know has come some challenges with Oregon because you guys had too much weed, too many people you flooded the market, and then the price crashed, and supply and demand and all those economic factors. If you could change something in the state that would improve the usage of it or the market of it, what are some of the things that you'd like to see happen in Oregon?
Well, I think you put your finger on it there. Being restricted to commerce only within the state doesn't make any sense. Oregon and Northern California are like the breadbasket of cannabis for this country. Our climate is perfect for outdoor cannabis. So, I mean, it's almost like you said, oh, Florida, you have to keep all your oranges within your state, and everybody else has to set up a warehouse with lights where they grow their oranges for their state. Agriculturally, it doesn't make any sense. And energy efficiency wise, all those things. So we'd love to see interstate commerce, and that would also allow emerging markets for people to have access to, like you said, mature markets where products are very developed and really high quality and they're well tested. And we also want those markets to not be dominated by huge corporations. So we want to keep craft producers and the small independent mom and pop growers in the game. So how do we support that, whether it's through co-ops or appellations like wine has, grown in this region, could be a special thing and something that's verified. So there's a lot of thoughts around how to do that, but I think they have to go together, because if you just go interstate commerce without supporting those other pieces, the huge conglomerates will take over.
Right. And I think that's one of the biggest fears of most people that are in this space now. There used to be 2 states, 3 states, 4 states. Now there's 15 states that have adult use legal programs. Some obviously just voted it in November, and others are like Colorado, Arizona, Nevada. They're starting out a little ahead of the game a little bit. Are you confident? Now, granted, there's a little of a political spin here. I think you're probably more confident with the administration we have in place now than the one it just replaced. However, with politicians, with people that perhaps don't understand the culture of cannabis, everybody's looking to make a cash grab, and politicians are right in the middle of this. So I guess my question is, are you confident that we're going to get it right at the federal level at some point, or are there going to be some more mistakes?
Oh, what a question.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
And I
I
don't know
like,
if there's an answer to that, by the way. I'm just
yeah,
interested to hear your feelings.
um, I wouldn't go so far as to say that I'm confident.
Okay.
Hopeful that we can get there eventually.
Yeah.
I think I have to keep that spirit alive and keep, you know, eyes on the vision. If you don't have ideals, you know, good for
Right.
the greatest possible, right? So
Oh,
um, I'm more to actually move things forward, but some of it's going to depend. You know, in Oregon we have Earl Blumenauer. You know, we have
mhm.
Wyden.
Yeah.
Our you know Congress people are and Merkley. You know, they're all very leading voices in as far as cannabis issues go. I feel very confident about those lawmakers
Yeah.
and the job that they have done for us in Oregon. And as far as making the sausage as they do on the federal level, it's pretty. I've done a little lobbying over there, and it's kind of an ugly thing. Um, but that said, the American people, a majority, support federal legalization across
Hmm.
party lines.
Hmm.
So I think that it's only a matter of time, and I'm hoping it'll happen within the next 4 years in some form.
Yeah. I think we're all kind of hopeful, but wary perhaps of the educational level of those who are making those decisions. Is that accurate? You said you had some experience on the lobbying side. Did you talk to local Oregon legislators in both locally and at the federal level?
Yes, I've done lobbying here in our state capital in Salem, as well as over in DC, and with cannabis groups. And
Right.
and it's very interesting when you're talking to those staffers, and occasionally the actual representative themselves. Sometimes the staffers, they just get right to it. They're like, well, what does this person's office say? Because we just go with whatever they say, whether that's so if you know how to, and you can frame your argument differently. If we're talking to the Republicans, we can talk about, well, these states have a legal, these businesses need support, and it's the state has decided it's their right, so we can kind of go that way. Obviously, on the Democratic side, we're taking a different argument, but all in this, when you're trying to persuade people, speak their language to get to the same goal.
Right. Yeah, and we know it's not easy. It is one of my biggest frustrations, again, and you are an educator, trying to enlighten people and educate them about the benefits of this plant from both a medicinal standpoint, but also now from an economic standpoint. The fact that we need to create jobs, we need to take advantage of some kind of a tax structure, even though some people think it may be skewed more towards. Uh, it may not be the best tax structure coming out of the gate, but I think they recognize that uh, they're trying at least to get it right in the beginning, recognizing that there's probably going to be a tweak in a few years as we look at the trickle down effect, as the growth of this industry. I get frustrated with the fact that I think people put the cannabis industry under a microscope, and they're holding it to a standard that perhaps they wouldn't with other agricultural products. And I guess that even includes hemp at this point, because the Farm Bill passed, and yet nobody really knew what the hell to do with it once it passed because there weren't any regulations about it. Talk about putting the cart before the horse. I mean, but that's how government works sometimes, I guess. Are you at all encouraged, though, from the fact that the ballot box continues to kind of dictate policy, and it's making our elected officials learn about this product and listen to their constituency? It's democracy at work in many ways, isn't it?
Absolutely. I, I think, and the thing I am very optimistic about within this particular administration is that they've returned to a focus on science. So less, looking at the actual data versus having an agenda and trying to find data that will bolster it. I do feel like now they're saying, especially for, environmental agencies and, medical, I feel like because the thing about cannabis is when you look at the science, it's always been pretty clear that this is not a dangerous drug. This is not, something that should be a Schedule I drug. Right. And so I think the education that can spring from scientists being empowered to actually be listened to, I think there's an opportunity here. I think politicians might see the political benefits, but then once they realize that this isn't just, it's not going to come back to bite you because there's real substance here. I just feel like we're breaking through. We're almost there. We're climbing this mountain.
That's right. I call it the Cannabis Dam. There's already 15 holes in that dam, and there's 36 cracks. And pretty soon we're going to break through and let it flow. Let it flow and let the plant do what God put it on this earth to do in the first place. I love enlightening people. I learned this fact looking up some history of cannabis in the United States, that in the 1920s, U.S. medical doctors wrote 5 million prescriptions for cannabis in the 1920s. And that it's 100 years ago at this point, I get it, but still, and a lot has happened, but it's just amazing to me how we took something that was so important to balancing the human body, the mammals, all the mammals that have the endocannabinoid system, right? We took that away from our humanity, took it out of, and what happened? We had cancer, we have epilepsy, we have Crohn's disease, we have all these things that we recognize now could have prevented or at least impacted it a lot earlier in our development than we have now. It's almost like we're playing catch up 80 years later, right?
Yes, I mean, there's been a lot of suffering, people, unnecessary suffering, avoidable suffering, whether that's something as common as migraines, where there's no great treatment, but people find a lot of relief from cannabis or CBD products. But the education isn't there, and including for people that are medical professionals, they don't have a lot of opportunity to actually, I think it's less than 15% of medical and nursing schools teach the endocannabinoid system, right? Which is like, it's the body's primary homeostatic regulatory system. We need to know about this.
I don't know if you know, but the Massachusetts Medical Society, within the last 3 weeks, I believe it was the last Saturday in 2020, had a 9-hour meeting, webinar, and I believe it was something like a couple of hundred doctors were on it. And they have now taken the word marijuana out of the thing, put in cannabis, and now are recognizing cannabis as a medicinal product. And we interviewed a doctor, a pediatrician, who's got a great reputation in Massachusetts. He's since retired, unfortunately, but he was so excited about that alone because he just felt like he'd been fighting this for so long. And then finally his peers recognized his work, his life's work. I mean, it was really a beautiful story that Dr. Eric Ruby told us a few weeks back. Got to ask you about your background in sports. I was a sports guy for a long time. I'm more of a soccer guy than a rugby guy. However, I do respect the game and I appreciate all sports, but specifically rugby too. How did you get introduced to rugby? And I see that are you still playing?
Well, yes. I mean, COVID has put a pause in our competition, but I haven't retired yet.
That's great. How did you get introduced to it?
Well, Jimmy, I was actually a soccer player for my whole life up into college. And then I had transferred schools. And so I was going to a new school out in Colorado. And I started with the soccer program there, and I was just not enjoying it. It was the off season, and we're just running in the gym, and they'd lost a lot the season before, so the coach is yelling at everybody. And
It doesn't work.
yeah, but at the same time, I was dating a rugby player, and so I met, through him, I met both rugby teams. There was a new women's team that this group of women had started up, and they were so fun. And they were like, hey, want to go sledding? Want to go get this cookie Sunday thing? Like, they were just cool and fun and doing stuff. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And so we went sledding, and they were like, oh, come and, because they've been like, come play rugby. I was like, well, I'm doing soccer. I can't really do that, like, well, let's tackle each other in the snow. So we started doing that. And once I did that, I was like, this is fun. Where has this been my whole life? Because I was an aggressive soccer player. Weird, you might have guessed, but I was a sweeper, and I was very physical. But it could be frustrating because you have to, soccer involves so much finesse, and
Right.
and the refs, I mean, you can have your foot on the ball. It can be a very clean situation of contact, but sometimes if you're the bigger player, like I'm about 5'11", they're going to say, you're being a brute, like penalty. And you're like, there was nothing, I was on the ball. So, so when I found rugby, I was just like, this is so suited to me. I get to be aggressive. I get to run over people, run around people, tackle people, and it was just I fell in love with it. It just suits my abilities and my skill sets. So
and are you you're coaching too, are you not?
I don't really do too much coaching.
Okay.
I am a certified referee, but I haven't really dipped my toes in that pond yet. I've got opinions about the game, obviously, so I think it's a natural. I think I do well, but that's more for maybe once I'm retired from active playing.
I get you. Hey, is there one thing that you still find about the cannabis plant that still kind of surprises you?
Yeah, I think the change in perspective that it can offer, whether that is just sometimes you don't even realize how much physical pain that you're in until it sort of lifts it off your shoulders. It's floating a little, you're not carrying it, and you can move a little better, and you say, wow, this feels good, and you sort of get back to yourself in that way. Or the mental perspective. Sometimes I've had insights through cannabis where it just takes my normal perspective that I just feel like is all encompassing, and it just lets me step out of that, and all of a sudden I'm looking from another angle, and I've had really important insights that way into my personal life and growth. So I think, the plant can offer self-discovery, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Hey, you learn something new every day, and this plant allows us all to know that we could study it more and more because we still are just scratching the surface really at its potential. Am I right?
Absolutely. There's so much to be done if especially if we're using like typical Western science that wants to isolate each thing. There are so many different things in the plant. But, we also have thousands of years worth of people's experiences that they share. And those are also important. And that is how we've passed along knowledge of how to help one another. And so, I think sharing individual stories is also very powerful.
There you go. Well, I love to share stories, as you can imagine. Anna Symonds from East Fork Cultivars. How can people get a hold of you, or at least check you out online and find out about your product?
Oh, yes. Our website is eastforkcultivars.com. We have our hemp CBD shop at eastforkandfriends.com. And then if you want to be my friend, please be my friend on Instagram. I'm Exit Drug. That's my username.
Got it. Hey, do you happen to know Dr. Uma Dhanabalan by any chance? Because she wrote the book called The Exit Drug. Do you know her?
I do know Dr. Uma. We were on a panel at the Cannabis Science Conference West in, I think, 2018. She was the moderator. Yeah, but I picked that name before I knew of her book before that documentary came out. It just, because people talk about cannabis and CBD as being exit drugs.
She's certainly one of the foremost authorities on it, and of course, a friend of Pro Cannabis Media and a friend of ours. She's in the same Massachusetts area, so I always like to drop her name as well. So I'll tell her that I spoke with you, and I'll share this interview with her, like we ask everybody to like, subscribe, and share. So again, Anna, thank you so much for joining us for a little conversation. And I love connecting the two coasts. So don't be a stranger. If there's anything we can do on the East Coast, please reach out, and we'll be happy to get back together again.
Sounds great. I'd love that.
All right, there you go. Well, that'll do it for another edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young on Pro Cannabis Media. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge, and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first. Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.